the difficulty, the reason why most of these transformations fail is that it's about people. It's about people's beliefs, how they feel about things, their previous programming. There's a whole mismatch of human emotion that goes into preventing change from happening, and that's what we're battling most of the time when we're trying to make a transformation.
Hi, welcome to Radical Transformation, the show where we get up close and personal with the leaders disrupting and transforming business today. I'm your host, Mike Swetman, and today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by lean expert Philip Holt. Philip started his career, he tells me, back when he was 16 as an engineering apprentice, before then joining Gillette and having a series of roles with Royal Philips in Holland, where he was at one stage a lean director, before also then joining travel retailer Travelport, and most recently GKN Aerospace here in the UK as SVP of Operational Excellence. Now, along the way, Philip has also found the time to publish 3 books: Leading with Lean, The Simplicity of Lean, and Leading Lean by Living Lean. There's a tongue twister, isn't there, Philip? And has also become a sought-after public speaker on the circuit on lean leadership. He's doing a lot, I know, at the moment because I follow him online. It's Philip's personal mission to make the world of work a better place for people by enabling leaders to lead with lean. Welcome to the show, Philip, and thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Very well, Mike, and thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
No, absolutely welcome. I've been following you online as well, Philip, so it's great to have you on our show as a guest today. Philip, let's jump straight in. I'm curious, what was your first exposure to lean, and was there a eureka moment when you knew that lean would become your calling?
Yeah, it was. It's interesting, Mike, because really from an early stage, back in the early 90s, I was reading The Machine That Changed the World, and I was trying to learn about this just-in-time manufacturing and reading books, and we had quite a bit of improvements in what we were doing in our operations as a result of that. I also became a Six Sigma green belt as well, and really felt that as an engineer, I understood the tools. I actually did my degree dissertation on Taguchi methodologies in improvement. So I really felt from an engineering perspective, I understood what I was doing from a lean and Six Sigma perspective. But then fast forward to 2008, and I joined what was then called the Simply Philips team as the head of the lean program for. We had a very strange situation. It was North America and Western Europe, as it was called, even though we had a factory in Eastern Europe as well. And I was running the team that was helping to get Simply Philips off the ground there. And we were very fortunate to go to Japan as a kickoff. And after about a week being in Japan, I started to realize that maybe I didn't know too much about lean. We had an ex-Toyota guy, he'd been 30 years with Toyota, and then he'd moved to head up one of the suppliers to Toyota. Very common thing for Toyota to do with their executives. And he came in and spoke to us about experience in lean. And before he came to speak to us, we'd all put on a 2x2 how many years of experience we had and how we rated ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10 for lean. And most of us put ourselves at 6, 7s, 8s for the experience in lean or knowledge in lean. After he spoke to us, we all went up to the front and put ourselves down as a 1 because we realised after listening to this gentleman that we knew very little, because I personally had the eureka moment of, this is not about the tools. It's really not. It's about the people. And over the following years, between 2008 and now, it's become less and less about the tools, which for most intelligent people are pretty straightforward to use. The difficulty, the reason why most of these transformations fail is that it's about people. It's about people's beliefs, how they feel about things, their previous programming, how they are fearful of change, how they fear what might happen to them and their roles. There's a whole mismatch of human emotion that goes into preventing change from happening. And that's what we're battling most of the time when we're trying to make a transformation.
Got it. No, thanks, Philip. It must have been quite humbling, your visit to Japan, early career, having to reassess, what you did and didn't know at that stage. But no doubt, extremely useful, wasn't it, at the time, in terms of telling you what you needed to do and what you didn't know. What's the why behind what you do each day, Philip? Why'd you do this?
So as you said, my personal mission is making the world of work a better place for people. And I think, I love having a meaning. I think most of us want to have a meaning or a purpose in life. The reason we get up in the morning and go to smash the doors in and try and do a great job. And for me, it's about making things better for people at work. And it's not a totally altruistic mission, because if you look at all of the data out there, particularly from Gallup with their engagement surveys, what you see is that, most people are disengaged. Engagement globally is very low. It's about 23% globally. And people who are actively disengaged is higher than the people who are engaged. And this means that you've actually got a big problem as a business in getting people who are going to actually make a difference to your business every day. And what Gallup have been able to show, and other organizations and academics, is that the more engaged your people are, the better the business performs. So to use that American cliche, it's win-win. You have people who come to work feeling better about the job they're doing, feeling that they've got meaning in what they do, and your business performs better. So for me, the best way I've found to engage people is through a very holistic way of leading a lean transformation, of creating what I call that lean leadership across the business.
Got it. Well, let's dive deep into that then, Philip. Because I read your Leaning Lean book, and in that you shared a fascinating metaphor with us, with the readers, about the world famous violinist Joshua Bell. I think this was in 2007. Who weeks before had sold out opera houses around the world, before then in a social experiment busking solo and going virtually unnoticed on a New York subway, playing I think a $3.5 million violin and a most intricate piece of music possible. Now I'm curious to know more about the learns our listeners can take away from this experiment when it comes to people engagement and successfully implementing lean in their organization. Tell us more, Philip, in your own words.
Yeah, so I came up with this, Mike, because, one of the things I practiced since 2008 and has been life-changing for me is the practice of Hansai, which is deep reflection. And I deeply reflect every day on what are my learnings from that day. What went well, what didn't go well, what can I do to be better? And this is both personally and from a business perspective. I reflect holistically on, and it helped me to change as a person and hopefully become a better leader, but also a better husband, a better father, a better friend. That's my intention by doing this. And when I was writing the book, I was thinking, okay, what's one of the key metaphors of this book? What's meaningful to me? And when I'd read the article about Joshua Bell, it had kind of triggered something in myself about how I'd been as an engineer and then as a leader up until 2008. Making sure I had the best tools, the best violin, making sure I practiced so I could play the music really, really well, i.e. use the tools highly effectively. So I was trying to be the best that I possibly could. But the problem is, what I'd realized is that why sustainability had always been a challenge for me, as it is for many others, is that I was focused on the technical aspects, on me being the best, on providing the best performance. But as it says in the article, Gene Weingarten says, who's the author of the article, if a great musician plays great music, but no one hears, was he really any good? And then Joshua Bell, and this summarizes what maybe I'd been doing up to 2008. Joshua said, at the beginning, I was just concentrating on playing the music. I wasn't really watching what was happening around me. So those two statements really kind of summarized for me the problem that many of us, I'll stick to myself, but I think it applies to many people, that I was having, which was I was trying to be the best I possibly could be, but ignoring what was going on around me. And I think that's what I've tried to change since 2008. It's much more about what's going on around me. And maybe if I don't have the best violin and maybe my tune isn't quite the best, doesn't matter as long as I've managed to engage the audience. And yeah, it's not really an audience, it's my colleagues, it's the people I'm working with. So to me, that engaging of people was what this was a metaphor about.
Understood. Understood. So what can leaders of lean organizations take away from that? That metaphor, because as you say, they can have all the tools, they can have great people trained up in lean, but if the workforce aren't engaged, if they don't hear them, if they don't connect with the purpose, it's probably not going to work, is it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of my key learnings, and purpose is different things to different people. I think I think most people have heard the cliches. They've heard the things like, when we're doing a change program, people will talk about Kotter's 8 steps of change, and they'll have the training. And one of the key things is, what's in it for me? But do we actively work on that? Do we actively try to understand what's in it for me? Often you'll see, visions or missions of change programs of companies, and they talk about things that are very abstract to the majority of the employees. The vast majority of employees are working at the coalface, metaphorically speaking. They're the people adding value every day. They're normally the people who are lower paid than the executives. And a lot of the time, the things that they worry about are, paying bills on time, putting food on the table, making sure that their family are looked after, and, worrying about whether they're going to go from single digit to double digit EBITDA is not really the thing that they get up out of the morning and think about. So what we need to do is think about what really matters to the people we want to engage. And again, the beauty of it is, if you can actually work that out, you actually get the overall business results that you want. So it really is about, putting together something that's compelling for everybody in the organization and making the team better overall. So, that for me is what we need to take as, and it's one of these cliches, but it's really meaningful to me. It's about servant leadership. Joshua Bell was there to serve his audience, but when he was on that underground, he was only serving himself. That's what his statement said to me. The key thing is, how do you serve the people as a leader? It's a privilege to be a leader, and I think we sometimes forget that.
I've got it. Philip, can you give an example of, in your career, of where you've seen it done very well, where you've seen a leadership team put together a story, a vision that's really compelling to the workforce, so that they've gone with them, they've trusted them to go with them on that journey?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of blow the trumpet of myself a little bit, but also very much the team that I was part of. I was speaking recently to a company just last week in the Netherlands, and I spoke to them about the best time in my career has been the past 5 years in GK Aerospace. And the reason for that is that I was part of the operations leadership team that we started in 2019. And I felt that we put together a fantastic vision of how we were going to make lean fly, we used to say. We were going to use lean, a bit of a cliche with obviously being an aerospace company, but how we were going to use our lean operating model to make people's lives better every day, by giving people the opportunity, everybody the opportunity to do the best they possibly could every single day. Gallup, in their engagement survey, talk about what was your best last day at work. And what we wanted to do was to make everybody's yesterday the best last day at work, and today was going to be the next one. And it was really a team that focused on understanding holistically the model. And again, one of the tricks of leadership is I always say as a leader, you have two hats. You have your singular hat as the owner of a function, and you want to make sure that that function has got that strong and deep functional understanding so that it can contribute really well. But you've also got to have that collegial or collective responsibility across the leadership team where you're focused on the overall business performance and the overall goals of the of that, so you don't sub-optimize. There's no point. Again, one of my personal learnings was back in about 2006. I was part of a post-merger integration team in Philips, and I was heading up the procurement function. The procurement function was doing fantastically well. We got audited by the corporate function, and they showed that we'd moved from a very immature organisation to a very mature organisation. And my then boss said to me, "Philip, that's fantastic." He said, "But the other functions aren't performing at that level. So you're like one cylinder on a car that's performing well when the other cylinders aren't. We're still not moving fast enough. What are you going to do to help everybody else to come up to the right level?" And that's what I think we did in the past 5 years in GK Aerospace. We worked for the greater good, not for our individual functional, selfish goals. And I think that's where leadership really shines.
Got it. Philip, great story. Taking us on to leadership, I know that in your books, you describe your 4 different lean leadership styles. Tell our listeners about these styles and how they might learn to adapt their leadership styles to different challenges and situations, please.
Yeah, so again, this came from my first book, Leading with Lean, and I really tried to think about, okay, what are the styles of leadership that collectively come together to create lean leadership, this nirvana that I'm talking about, where we've got lean leadership across an organization. And I actually drew it as a Venn diagram because I felt that, the only way it works is when all 4 are intersecting in that central area. So the first one is around leadership activism. There's a great leader, he's just retired, but a leader called Dr. Kaplan, who took one of the best lean organizations, Virginia Mason, a hospital group up in the northwest of the US. And he took them from a journey in 2000 where they had one of the highest levels of unnecessary deaths of hospitals in the US to probably the best or one of the best in terms of that, with big engagement issues with their people, big turnover issues. And one of his sayings is, you've got to be an activist leader, not an advocate leader. You can't be somebody who just advocates for other people to go and do lean. You've got to be an activist leader. You've got to roll up your sleeves and you've got to actually live lean. You've got to show people that you believe in it and you've got to show that it works for you. So leadership activism is about really leading. We sometimes talk in lean terms about Genchi Genbotsu, go to Gemba, go to the place where the work's done. It's more than that. It's about living it. It's about having your own leader standard work, about living the Hoshin, about prioritizing, about being that servant leader. Then you've got the next one. It's very closely related, which is why it's number 2, is visible leadership. So visible leadership isn't managing by walking around. It's not that old one where people would see the manager walk around the shop floor. They weren't quite sure why that person was there, but they'd read in some management book that they should be seen, so they walked around the shop floor so that they were seen. Now, visible leadership is being part of that 5S event. It's linked to leadership activism, but it's being visible. Being in that 5S event, cleaning down the machines, showing people, or if you're the chief financial officer, going running a month-end closing with your people and letting them see you being part of that and epitomizing and demonstrating what the future ought to look like. The third one is coaching leadership, and that's about using situational leadership to ensure that you coach people. So, in the situational leadership, depending on somebody's confidence and how competent they are, you need to look after them in different ways. So if they've got low confidence in something and the competence isn't there yet, you might have to be very directive in the way that you lead that person. But by the time somebody becomes very confident and very competent in doing that, you're going to basically give them the keys to the car and say, look, check in with me. You know what the vision is. You've got your freedom within a framework. You go and get the job done. So coaching leadership is about understanding how to interact with your people on a situational basis so that you can help them every day to get better at what they do. And it's using things, again, in lean terminology, such as kata coaching, so that we're able to ask the right questions. And this is one of the most difficult things for a leader to do, because many leaders have been promoted because of their technical acumen. They're really good at the job they do. They're the best normally at what they do, so they become the manager. But then you've got to start allowing people to make mistakes and to learn, not tell them what to do all the time. So it's a very difficult balance for many people, and many groups of people with managers who are very much technocrats, they end up in a fearful situation where they're scared to do anything unless the boss has told them explicitly to do that. So you become really a bunch of hands and just one brain. And what we want is to utilize everybody's brain. So you need coaching leadership to bring out the talent in everybody in the organization. And then the final leadership style that makes up lean leadership is what I call mosquito leadership. And mosquito leadership, it's that whole philosophy of, it's an old African proverb. If you think that you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping an evening or a night time in a room with a mosquito, because that mosquito is going to have a massive impact on your sleep that night. And this idea that I'm too small to make a difference in a large organization, I call out. I say, you're not being that activist leader. You're not being that visible leader. You're not being that coaching leader unless you believe that you can infect the organization with your belief and your enthusiasm. And that's what I've tried to do all my career. And certainly since 2008, I've tried to be that mosquito leader.
Brilliant. I love the mosquito leader label as well, Philip. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
What advice would you give to our listeners if they're being asked to step up now and provide leadership in their organisation today? What do they have to nail? What are the signs to look out for? If it's going well, the checkpoints along the way to know if they're getting it right, and the tells maybe that they're getting it wrong. What advice would you give us?
Yeah, so my last book, Leading Lean by Living Lean, as you say, a bit of a mouthful, but the tagline to that is changing how you lead, not who you are. And the reason I went for that is that I think many people, when they step up into a leadership role, they think they have to change who they are and become somebody different. The problem is you can never be somebody else because you're yourself. So it's a fine line between taking inspiration from others and trying to emulate them. And I think that's the really difficult thing for people when they move into managerial roles. They start to become or try to morph into somebody else. I read a LinkedIn post the other day about people who get fearful of their boss going on holiday because they're going to buy a new leadership book and then come back and trying to be that leader. And you can't possibly be somebody else. So I think my key advice is be yourself. Again, a cliche, authentic leadership, but it needs to be done in reality. Be yourself, but learn how to lead. Learn what works and what doesn't. Be that activist leader, be that visible leader, be that coaching leader, be that mosquito leader, but work with your people. And again, as I send in the coaching leadership, don't try to be the expert. Don't try to be the cleverest person in the room, the smartest person in the room. Listen to your people, learn from them, and see yourself more as a football captain than the head of the captain of the ship. I would say, be the captain of a football team. Don't be the captain of a ship.
I've got it. And what are the tells, Philip, to look out for along the way? In your organisation to be able to sort of have some confidence that you're turning a corner and this is working, and vice versa. What would tell you that it may be you haven't got it right yet?
So I've talked a lot about people and about engaging people. What I don't want to do is give the impression that it's also not about results. So you need to have some good metrics. A lot of people talk about QCD, quality, cost, and delivery. I've expanded it again. I didn't invent this. I proudly stole this from other organisations and put it together into PSQDCC. And I think any organisation can measure around people. How are the people feeling? How are they engaged? And there's different ways of measuring that. Safety. So how do people feel in terms of safety? Now, we all think about safety from a physical environment, but safety is also psychological safety. So how can we get into a position where people start to feel safe psychologically to challenge? At the end of the day, a big tell if you're a boss is if you're not being challenged. People aren't challenging you, then you've got a big problem. Next one's quality. So how are you performing from a quality perspective? Again, quality can be physical quality of products, but it can also be service quality levels. Delivery performance, how often are you on time? Again, it can work for both physical and service products. Cash. So again, cash can be inventory, but it can also be cash flow, for example. And then finally, cost. So cost of organization or cost to run production or manufacturing. Again, it can be cost of organization if you're a service organization. So if you can figure out the metrics that you want to change as a leader and improve and how you measure good performance, and again, work this out with your people, then you can start to measure how you're performing. And again, you need to make these meaningful. So your organization might have a top level way of measuring itself. You need to bring line of sight so you're directly pointing towards what the overall organization wants, but make sure for your department, your group, your team, that you're measuring something that's meaningful to everybody in that team.
Great, thanks, Philip. Very comprehensive answer there. Remember that, guys, PSQSDC. And maybe, Philip, we can put something about that in the after show notes as well for our listeners.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
absolutely, Mike.
And just sort of leading on from that, as a lean coach, what I've noticed is it's quite common to be in an early career asked to step up and coach leaders in your company, sometimes at the executive level, at C-suite level, on why they should embrace lean, on how to lead by example, the shadow that they're leaving, and how to create the right foundations for success. And that can be, as you know, quite intimidating. It can be quite daunting. I imagine, Philip, you're nodding your head that you've been in that situation yourself. How do you prepare for that moment to get ready to coach, up in your organization, sometimes at the very highest level? How do you prepare for that moment?
Yeah, so I think the most difficult thing is to take yourself out of your own paradigm. And what I mean by that is, at whatever level you are in the business, you'll have your own view of the world and what is really important to the business, what the problems are, what frustrates you. And it's highly likely, especially if you're 2, 3, 4 levels down in the organization, they're going to be quite different than the person you've been asked to go and coach. So the first thing is to really try and understand what is the problem for them, what keeps them up at night, what bugs them. However you want to phrase this, what's the problem that they would like to solve? Because if you can go and speak in their terms, in their language, you'll build credibility, you'll build understanding, and you'll build a relationship with them, and they'll feel, okay, I can work with this person can help me. If you're, I don't know what's a good example. If you're the lean leader in a factory, and that factory is one of 40 factories, and for you, the biggest problem you've got is quality, because you've got a particular quality problem. If you go talking to somebody 2 levels up, say the COO, and start talking about quality, but overall quality isn't an issue for that COO. Actually, inventory is the problem that they have to solve that's getting them kicked in the backside every week. Then you start talking to them about quality and they're going to turn off. So you need to understand what is the problem that they need to solve, and that will build credibility.
Understood, yeah. So really understand your audience's needs and key priorities and be able to speak to those priorities. Good.
Absolutely.
Philip, you've been in the lean industry now for well over 30 years. How have you seen that industry, this industry that we all know and love, evolve since you first started out?
Yeah, so I think I might be being a bit semantic here, or pedantic probably, but it's I think it's important. I don't think there should be a lean industry. Um, I think we've got industry, right? We've got businesses, and I'll be quite honest with you. Even though people say, "Oh, you're passionate about lean," somebody even wants a kind of friend and colleague called me Mr. Lean once. I'd give it up tomorrow if there was a better way of improving a business. It's a I see it as more than a tool or a methodology. I see it as a strategic way of running a business, but I'm only selecting that because that to me is the absolute best way that we can do this. That's the best way that we can make a difference to our business in a very positive way. So lean to me, like everything, should continuously improve. My way of deploying lean leadership across an organization has evolved over time. It's different now than it was in 2008. It's different than it was in 1995 when I was opening books, reading books, and doing value stream maps, or MIFAs, as they were called then. So I think it's really important that we realize that lean is a way of achieving something. It's not the end goal. Shouldn't be an industry in its own right. What we're trying to do is make businesses better. And as I say, I'm trying to make businesses better by making the world of work better for people.
I've got it. Okay. And when I say industry, Philip, I guess, the consultancies have sprung up, of course, and, people write books, and it has, but it is a movement. I get that as well, that you're involved with here.
Yeah, it shouldn't exist, I guess, is my point, Mike. If we were all really good at what we did, we'd work ourselves out of existence.
I think it might be around for some time still, Philip. What's next for you?
So I mentioned, I've had a really successful past 5 years with GK Aerospace. The success of that is that there was no role for me any longer there. So that's been a really successful, bittersweet leaving, because I love the company. I really think GK Aerospace under Melrose has thrived, and I think it's only going to go on to bigger and better things. So it's a shame to have left. I'm keeping in touch with a lot of my ex-colleagues, which is great. And now I'm really, I've just started my own company, Leading with Lean. Surprisingly, I've chosen that term, that name. So Leading with Lean, I'm working with a couple of key clients on some work. I've been doing some keynote speaking. I've always spoke at conferences and occasionally gone to corporate events, and I've ramped that up a little bit. So I've just been to 2 corporate events in the past 3 weeks, and I'm going to the Journey to Excellence conference. Actually, John Tudor of True North Excellence runs a Journey to Excellence conference every year. It's up at the Hotel Football in Manchester on the, I think it's the 21st and 22nd of November, but forgive me if I've got those dates wrong, John. No, it's the 22nd and 23rd of November. And anybody who's not going, who's in the UK or in Europe and can get there easily, should book a ticket and go, because it's a fantastic event with a couple of really good keynote speakers, lots of other breakout speaker sessions, and also some visits to some world-class companies to go see them on day 2. So yeah, I'm enjoying a change in my work life at the moment, Mike, and looking forward to continuing to make the world better through our people. But who knows? I'm quite excited.
Brilliant. And just those dates one more time, Philip. Anyone that's in Manchester, was it 21st, 22nd?
22nd and 23rd of November. Yes. Yeah.
2nd, 23rd of November can catch you there. Great. You mentioned something really interesting a minute ago. I know you love your time with GK and Aerospace, but that had to come to an end. Is it an occupational hazard that if you're at the top of your game in what you do, particularly in lean, you could end up doing yourself out of a job at some point? Is that was an inevitability?
I think it's the key measure of success, Mike. If you don't, what have you actually achieved? There is the argument to say, well, you can change the scope of the role, but effectively, if in 5 years' time, if I couldn't have created a situation where the capability was in the business and no longer in me and my team, then I would have failed. So I consider it a key measure of success.
Good, I understand. Yeah, understand. Good. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, learn about the people element much sooner. Too much of an engineer in my early career. It was successful, don't get me wrong. I'm not pretending it was a disaster. I did a lot of good stuff and enjoyed working with a lot of great people, but far too focused on the engineering side. And we've not mentioned it, and we don't really have time to do it justice, but one of the key eureka moments for me in the past 5 years has been David Bovis's BTFA model, which runs concurrently with the PDCA model. And it's about understanding that emotional and people side, the belief, think, feel, and act elements of how human brains respond to change and transformation and stimuli. And that has helped me to, I guess that's one of the key reasons why the past 5 years have been the best in my career in terms of the success that I feel that I and my teams have achieved.
Oh, fantastic. Where can our listeners find you online, Philip?
So LinkedIn, of course, if you do a search for me, I'm on LinkedIn. I've also got a website, leadingwithlean.com. And those are probably the two main areas to connect with me online.
Brilliant. There was one other thing I wanted to ask you. You mentioned earlier in our conversation that you make time every day for deep reflection and have done since 2008. Hansai, tell us a little bit more about that. And if anyone's interested, how can they give that a go?
Yeah, so I actually, it's an integral part of my books as well. I believe in it so much. So actually at the end of each of my chapters, I ask people to practice Hansai, and there's 3 key questions to ask yourself. So from the experience, whether it be reading a book, doing a project, being in an event, or just what happened today, what were your key learning points? Number 1, the changes that you could make to how you responded and how you reacted that day, or from what you learned, and the current problems that they would help to solve. And I've kind of adapted the way that I do my Hansai now, but those are the starting points. And that's how you really start, by practicing Hansai. And just doing that for 5-10 minutes every day, for me, it's been life-changing.
Fantastic. Philip, any other parting thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think just to reiterate, about development, about becoming a great leader, it really is about changing how you lead, not who you are. So be yourself. You are a great, you are you, and you're a fantastic individual. But that doesn't stop you from developing and changing how you interact with other people and the way that you appreciate other people and learn from other people. So yeah, change how you lead, but don't change who you are.
Brilliant advice. Thank you so much for coming on Radical Transformation today. Huge luck. I'm sure you'll be really successful in the next chapter of your career. For anyone that's going to be in Manchester, 22nd and 23rd of November, look out for Philip at the event. And of course, you can get him online, all details to follow. But Philip, once again, thanks so much. It's been an absolute pleasure and joy having you on the show today. Have a great day.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.